This is Ray Varner. I'm here with the Oral History Living Legacy Project with the Women of RMC Oral History Project. And I'm here with Ainslie Rose of 96 and Sarah Hendricks. I'm Ray Varner, class of 2010. And I guess, hello. So how did you first hear about Randolph-Macon College?
Well, I grew up in Connecticut, and my mother had a good friend whose son, Tommy Williams, was 3 years older than me, and he had gone to Randolph-Macon to play football. So Mrs. Williams had given me a copy of the Randolph-Macon kind of welcome book or with an application in it, and as I was flipping through, it sort of just embodied to me what I pictured in a college, like the brick buildings, the history, the character, the beautifully manicured grounds, the ability to be outside many months a year. And I had applied to 12 other schools, and most of them were all in New England. Randolph-Macon was the only one, I guess, probably south of Philadelphia I had applied to. And I had pretty much had my heart set on going to school in Boston. And I was going to go to Babson University. And at the last minute, I just sent in my application. We went down for a visit. I only probably stayed an hour and a half, just kind of took a walk through. And there was just something about that little school that appealed to me, and just the warmth of the people that I came to interact with. So at the very last minute, I had sent my deposit. I had accepted to go to Babson. On my graduation program, it said I was going to Babson. But at the last minute, I called Randolph-Macon and asked if I could still come, and sent my deposit in, and the rest is history.
Can you say more about that first trip?
Sure.
Just what you saw.
Pretty much, I just went to the admissions office. They gave me a general introduction. We took a short tour. I really wasn't there for all that long. Like I said, I was probably there maybe an hour and a half. But I did have an opportunity to walk around the campus. Saw a number of people that were sitting around the fountain. People playing football in the courtyards. And it just really appealed to me that, one, it was beautiful, the surroundings were beautiful, but the quality of the people that I met, and those people were friendly and just very warm and hospitable, and that to me just kind of spoke to me personally, and it was something that I wanted to be a part of.
Do you remember any of those people that you met?
Oh gosh, I don't even remember who was in the admissions office at that time. I wish I could remember names. I don't think anyone I really interacted with is there now. Like, whoever gave me a tour, I wish I could remember who it was. It was a student that gave us a tour, and I apologize, I don't remember the student's name, but...
Can you tell us about the first time you arrived as a freshman? So when you came for orientation, or
so we used to have what was called Prep Week, which was a full week of orientation before classes started, which was great for freshmen because it really gave you a time to bond amongst each other and get to know each other without everyone else being on campus. So you sort of had the run of the place for the first week. And, just in the dining hall and the different activities, you really got an opportunity to know your other classmates and, forge friendships that, are still a very viable part of my life today. I had that very first week, and then the second week, everyone else arrived. It was a great way to sort of, being that I was so far from home, I was from Connecticut, and I was going a lot farther than my parents had expected me to be. It really just helped because within a short amount of time, I made friends and was really able to know that I had made the right decision for myself and taking this big leap of faith and going so far where I knew not one person other than Tommy Williams, who was going to be a senior when I was there.
Do you remember anything about the programs or anything?
I know that they had different things that we had to do during the day as part of Prep Week. We had, classes that's probably not the right word. It was, it wasn't things that you were graded on, but there were some requirements that you had to do that Prep Week. And then, there was definitely time to get information about different activities, kind of, learn where things were on campus, who the resources were. I'm trying to think of anything else that we really kind of focused on. There was really a lot of time for us to just kind of get to know each other and, have some downtime. And they might have shown a movie at the campus center and things like that to just kind of bring us together. But it wasn't, it was formalized, but it wasn't anything that you were really being, graded on other than more of like a check, you've completed Prep Week.
Can you tell us about your social life?
Sure.
If you were in a sorority or...
I was in a sorority. I was a member of Kappa Alpha Theta. And prior to coming to Randolph-Macon, I really didn't ever see myself participating in Greek life necessarily. My dad was in SAE where he went to school. And, he always spoke about his fraternity. And his good friends were still his fraternity brothers. And when my parents got married, much of their wedding party was, his fraternity connections. And so I'd always known about Greek life and I grew up with an appreciation for it, but I just didn't know, how I would personally become involved. And so my freshman year, I did join Kappa Alpha Theta. And I will have to say that the friends that I made in that sorority are still my best friends today. And, when I got married, I had 9 people in my wedding party and every single one of them was a sorority sister. So, for me, it was probably one of the best things I could have done. And I took on some leadership positions, and actually was vice president of development at the time. I don't know if they've changed the title. But I took on that leadership role and then lived in the sorority house for 2 years, which I loved.
Did you participate in anything else on campus?
I did participate in tennis. My first year I came in and I was on the tennis team, which I enjoyed. I just found that I wanted to use that time to do other things. And as I got more involved in my sorority, I just had to kind of prioritize. So I played tennis my freshman year and then just kind of played recreationally after that.
Okay. Can you tell us more about your friends? So those in the sororities or anyone that you felt really close to?
Yeah, I have to say, obviously my sorority girlfriends were, definitely the people I probably interacted with and was closest with. But even today, I have other friends from my class that weren't necessarily in my sorority or in, other sororities or maybe not even a part of Greek life. I just think that, I am very fortunate and compared to other people that I've met now or went to high school with who don't have these connections that have lasted them throughout their lives. I feel very appreciative that I was able to meet these other women who their outlook on life and their, kind of positive approach to things really, to me spoke volumes about their character. And, they're the type of people that have supported me and been there, through the ups and downs of life. And, these women will be my friends forever.
So, where did you live? Where did you live before? You might have lived in the sorority house. Yeah. Where did you live before?
Let's see. So freshman year, I lived down campus. It was called Olin, which I know is still there, and it was before we had air conditioning. So I arrived with my little fan, and it was quite warm. It was 90 degrees when coming from Connecticut. I wasn't used to the heat and humidity like it was there. So I lived in Olin. It was all girls hall. I remember the vending machine was right outside my room, and so you would always hear all hours of the night the Cokes and beverages being dispensed. So that was a sound you had to learn to sleep through. So between that and the train going through campus, I think I've become a pretty sound sleeper. So I lived in Olin my freshman year. Sophomore year, I lived in Moreland, which was co-ed. And so I lived on the all-girls hall or all-girls portion of Moreland my sophomore year. And then junior year, half of the year, I lived in Moreland on a co-ed hall, which I actually really didn't enjoy. It was just, our next door neighbors, they had totally different schedules, so it was kind of hard to sleep when they were wide awake. And so at that point, I actually moved into the sorority house my second semester, my junior year. And then I lived there my entire senior year. But I never lived off campus.
Can you say more about that co-ed dorm? Was it just the fact that were your neighbors, were they girls or were they boys that were co-ed?
So it was they did co-ed by room. So, or actually by suite since they were suite. So you would have a female suite and then next year you'd have a male suite and then a female suite. So it was that floor was co-ed. And that's how they staggered the rooms.
So did you feel more comfortable, even though it was the same building, with the all girls floor, or
it was just we were probably better suited when it was all girls. We just sort of had different schedules. Like the guys, our next door neighbors, the year that I lived on the co-ed floor, they played football. And so they'd come back from practice, and then they'd eat, and then they'd watch TV, and then they probably got around to studying, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 1 or 2 in the morning. And for us, that's when we were, wanting to go to sleep because we had already eaten, studied, done what we needed to do. We were ready to go to bed. So we just had very different schedules for our day, how we did our days. And I always had like 8:30 a.m. classes. So it was kind of a challenge to try to get some sleep when they were like rowdy and wide awake next door.
Do you remember your roommates?
Yeah, I remember every roommate I had. Actually, freshman year, I had a roommate who was from Virginia Beach. And her and I lived together a couple months, and then she moved out. She wanted a single. And so by default, I ended up with a single and was lucky enough to have it the remainder of the year. So I always had the room that, if someone's roommate was sick and they wanted to, go and sleep somewhere else where they weren't surrounded by germs, they'd come to my room. So it was great. I always had an extra bed for friends. And then sophomore year, I lived with Bridget Saunders Loesch. She was a sorority sister of mine. She actually married a fellow Randolph-Macon graduate. And then junior year, for the half of the year that I lived on the co-ed hall, it was Cassie Sims, and she's also a Theta. And then I moved into the sorority house and lived with Carrie Willie my junior year. And then senior year, did I live with my... Or no, I guess junior year I lived with Carrie Ellis. Senior year I lived with Carrie Willie. So 2 Carries.
So, do you think it was a good thing that you were living with your sorority sisters? Or?
It was. I mean, I was spending a lot of time with them. They knew me well. Yeah, we had a lot of fun together. I really
any stories or anything?
Oh, let's think of one I could share. We had lots of stories. I mean, when we moved into that sorority house, they had bought that house from. I'm trying to remember what fraternity had it previously. And their fraternity is not there anymore. I want to say SPE, perhaps. So it used to be their house years ago. And it needed a lot of upgrading and work. I mean, the kitchen when we first moved in was carpeted. It was probably, I'm sure that there were some aspects of it that really needed modernization. So it was a little rough go. And over time, we did a little bit more each year. And now I've been back and it's beautiful. It's completely renovated. And gosh, I wish I would have had a chance to live there now when they have a washer and dryer. I mean, our sink was this big utility sink in this room where we kept our bikes. It wasn't even in the kitchen. So you'd use the sink in the utility room and maneuver around the bikes. The stove was in the kitchen. The refrigerator was in the kitchen. But, we just made the best of it and, had a lot of fun with it. And over time, we repainted the rooms and the hardwood floors were refinished and got some new furniture. So it came a long way. Planted some flowers out front, got the rocking chairs on the porch. But I remember that first year, it was interesting. And then I remember there was something with the phone lines. I don't know how the phone lines got crossed, but the phone lines would get crossed with the fraternity houses. So I do remember, this is a clean story I can share, that our phone lines got crossed with, I think it was either K or SAE's phone lines. And it was around spring fling. And so you had to, as a sorority sister, you would invite a guest to join you for spring fling, which was our spring formal. So, one of the girls living in the house had made a decision of who she was going to ask, and she must have been talking to someone on the phone about it. Well, the phone line was crossed. That fraternity that the guy she was going to ask lived in knew that he was going to be getting this call because they had heard the phone conversation. So I'm sure there was a lot of, a lot of joking going on amongst the fraternity house of brothers that, they knew that this guy was going to be getting the call within minutes and invited to the spring formal.
Switching subjects a little bit, yes. but how did you decide your major?
I went in as a business and economics major, and I left as a business economics major. I mean, I pretty much knew coming out of high school that that's what I wanted to pursue, more on the business side than the economics portion of the degree. But, Randolph-Macon at the time did not have a business administration degree. So, I kind of had to do both, but I pretty much knew that that's what I wanted to do and stuck with it the whole time.
So who was your advisor?
Let's see. Dr. Lowry was my advisor. And I believe his first name is maybe George Lowry. I'm not sure. I know he was there up until recently. I'm not sure if he's still there today, but he was my advisor.
I think he's still certainly there. I don't think he's as
participating as much.
Because he used to run the internship program,
Yes.
and I think he just gave that to Ed Showalter.
Okay.
I think this is Ed's first year doing that. So
Okay.
the point is, I think
he's still active, but maybe not as much as he was. But yeah, he was one of my professors for several classes, and he was my advisor.
Did you come in with him as your advisor, or did you choose him later on?
I didn't come in with him, and to be perfectly honest, I don't remember who I came in with, but it was probably by my sophomore year, he was my advisor, and then he stuck with me for the next 3 years. But I do not remember who my advisor was my freshman year.
Are there any classes that you really enjoyed, or that?
I loved his classes that I took. I loved economics with Dr. Barry is his first name, and Fitzner. Yes, I loved Fitzner, and then Stephen Lang was another one whose classes I loved. So liked all of those. I took a class on world religions with Dr. Wessels, which I really enjoyed. There's just some ones that kind of come to mind. Some of the favorites.
Is there any reason why you like those in particular?
I guess the personality of the professor has a lot to do with it. I think the professors that were more engaging and the ones that got to know you and who really took a vested interest in you as a person, I probably just seemed to connect with a little bit better. I definitely appreciated the smaller class sizes. I was not the type of kid that was going to be able to go to a huge university and sit in an auditorium with hundreds of other kids and be a number. I knew that about myself. It just would never have worked for me. So the fact that I was able to go to a smaller liberal arts school where I really had that individual attention from my professors, and the ability to have them actually know me, so that when I asked for a recommendation my senior year, it wasn't a stretch for them to come up with things, because here they had spent 3 years getting to know me.
Right. So what did you do after graduation?
So after graduation, I went home for maybe 2 months, and then I moved here to Northern Virginia in August, and I got a job at Cable and Wireless, which was an international telecommunications company, and I worked in their sales division. And so they started out, when I first joined, they were a long-distance phone company, and over time they bought out some other companies' internet backbones and became a data and internet company, and they were a huge global company. But I was focused mostly on sales programs here in the United States.
Okay. How have you stayed in contact with the college through all the?
Well, I probably stay in contact more than most. I'm very active, and for me, it was important to always get back to Randolph Macon, because I felt like, I guess so much of who I am is based on my experiences there. So I joined the Board of Associates back in, it's probably been at least 5 years. I mean, so maybe, 2005 or 2006. Joined the Board of Associates. One of my classmates, her mother was on it at the time. She was a parent representative on the board, and she approached me to see if I would be interested. And, I was very flattered and jumped at the opportunity and have stayed on the board ever since. So I'm very involved in the Board of Associates. In fact, I just accepted the co-chair position on the Board of Associates. So that's something I'm looking forward to. And then the other thing that I've gotten very involved in is our 90s initiative. So working with other 90s classmates to really reach out and reconnect. We did notice that there was a disconnect with a lot of our fellow alumni, and their giving percentages and just their participation in things in that decade is off from other similar universities across the country. So we've made a huge effort to really appeal to those fellow alumni and work with them to put together programs and events that they can come to and really get them back on campus to see all of the amazing changes which have taken place, and I think just appeal emotionally just to what it was they fell in love with about the school, and what it was that connected them to their other classmates, and hopes of basically re-engaging them with the college. So that's something Graham Rashkin and I are co-chairing and very passionate about. And then I've always just done new students. I've done the phone calls to accepted students in the area, reaching out to the students and their parents, and just asking if they have questions, offering up my own experiences of what my time at Randolph Macon was like. I've done some where they've had accepted student sort of receptions here locally. I've gone to those and just given my own kind of words about my experiences there. Trying to think what other things. I don't know. I'm pretty active, I think, compared to other alumni.
So,
it's just a big part of who I am.
What is it that brings you back? What's the thing that when you come back to campus, what are you coming back for?
Let's see. I would say the thing that brings me back is I'm just very appreciative of. It's a good way to say this. Like, I'm just very appreciative of the opportunity I had there, and I think so much of my, I guess, character was defined while I was at Randolph-Macon. So, because of the experiences I had and the opportunities I think were granted to me, I just feel very strongly that for me it's a way to give back.
What is there a group or a thing that brings you back to campus?
I don't think there's one thing. I think there's a lot of things. I mean, I think there is. It's just something about being in that place is just very comforting for me. I think obviously the biggest thing is the people that I met there, and that keeps me connected and grounded there. Certainly my sorority, my fellow classmates, the professors that I had when I was there. I mean, Barkley in the bookstore, she's a, an icon there, and she always keeps me coming back. And I love that I can walk in there, and she will hug me and she'll know me by name, and she remembers things about me. I mean, how many students has that woman come and interact with? And the fact that, she will take the time out, and just, she's always going to know your name. And I love that. Can I blow my nose real quick?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I knew it was going to start eventually.
Well, I was going to follow up on a couple of questions. I'm curious. You mentioned you were in a sorority. Was Greek life in general a big part of the social scene, or were there...
I think it was a big part of my social scene. I could certainly say, I would say, the percentages when I was there, I would think maybe 60% participated in Greek life and maybe 40% did not. So for me, I was exposed to it and I was a part of it, and that was, a lot of where my social time was spent. But I don't think it was a situation of if you weren't involved in Greek life, you were not going to enjoy your time at the college. I think that there were plenty of other groups and organizations, so everyone could kind of find their niche. I mean, you didn't have to be a part of Greek life to enjoy your time there and have the same amazing experience. I mean, whether you wanted to do, yearbook or chorus or, drama, I mean, there were enough different types of opportunities available that I think everyone could, come out of it with that same, sense of, community and the relationships and the friendships, and I think it's all what you make of it. I think the opportunities were there for everyone to find their niche, and, everyone found their own little home away from home.
And so I have these kind of random questions that jump, but you mentioned the world religions, and of course Randolph-Macon has this broad liberal arts sort of background. You knew you wanted to go into business. Obviously, you've gone into business. Mm-hmm. But do you find that sort of your writing class do you feel like you draw on these other weird things? Not weird things, but biology.
I think I definitely do. And I think the biggest thing was that there were the small class sizes. And for me, I found that to be very non-intimidating. So I never, when I was taking a world religions class, it wasn't necessarily what my background was in and, not something that I had a breadth of knowledge about. I was never intimidated to ask a question or, I always felt very comfortable in that environment because it was a smaller classroom and I wasn't, sitting in an auditorium with all these other kids with, my one little hand in the back, like, oh, can you explain this further? It was just always very comforting, and you just always felt like you could have an open dialogue. And I think that served me really well professionally, because even today, if I have a question, I'm going to ask. I'm not going to just sit there and roll with it. So I think it just instilled sort of the confidence, maybe for lack of a better word, that you don't have to be shy about asking questions, and you don't have to feel like you just have to go along with things. You speak up. So I think it gave me the confidence to do that in some of those classes that weren't my strongest in terms of my knowledge.
So how do you value the liberal arts education, though? Since you were, a business economics, so you obviously had to take lots of other stuff, including, world religion. So what value do you put on that other stuff?
I think it gave me, a broader breadth of knowledge that I wouldn't have had otherwise. I took, classes in other areas that, I certainly probably wouldn't have taken at other schools if you, had declared your major and just focused on those. So I think it gave me a much broader base of, just interesting subjects that I would not have been exposed to otherwise.
So a few more questions, kind of along the same lines of having the small classes. You mentioned that you selected your advisor, and my understanding is that the advisors were a little bit more than just telling you what classes you needed to take. Is that true?
Yes. I mean, I could have showed up in Dr. Lowry's office to talk about anything. I mean, it didn't.
Did you?
I did. I mean, I knew him well. I sat in his classes, and we had actually a fun story. I don't know if they still do this today. So when you're a senior, we would have with your business and econ professors, they sort of had like a little senior party for you. And so it was a great way to really, be out of the classroom, have that time with your professors, drinking some beers. I mean, we're all over 21 at that point, and just really, getting to know them. I mean, there were some wild stories from, our years and years past about these parties, but it was just it was a good way to really feel like, yeah, you started out, you sat in their class, you had this, very, the relationship was solely based on, just the education that you were getting in their classroom. But, over time, as they got to know you, I mean, obviously the relationship took on so much more. And at that point, you were talking about where you were going to live and what kind of jobs you were looking at. But, just anything from apartments, like, finance. I mean, it was like you pretty much covered it all with them just because you did have that relationship. So I loved that it was just more than just a student to professor kind of dialogue. It was much more life and, what were your experiences, and just kind of, it had such a broader role.
Do you care to share any of those wild stories that you may have heard?
I will say that our year, some professors had to sleep in their vehicles so they wouldn't drive home. They made a very responsible decision that it was best that they spend the night in their car and not jeopardize, making bad decisions, which, was the right thing to do. But yeah, after several beers, and I think we even ended up at Andy's pool hall right on the main strip. I think that's where we closed down the night. So it was definitely a good time, and you always looked forward to that party and send off at the end of the year when you're a business and e-card. They do it.
It starts in the back of the Rodin house.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly where it started. Yes, so I'm glad the tradition is very much still alive. But
were there other kids from the north?
There were a handful. I remember my senior year, so that would have been January 1996, after after Christmas vacation. There were two other kids, actually. One other kid who I had his father as a high school teacher, and he knew my family very well. He ended up coming to Randolph-Macon. And then I had another girlfriend who was she was a Phi Mu at Macon, and she lived probably like 40 minutes away from me in Connecticut. And so I picked the two of them up, and there we were driving back from Connecticut, and it was the start of that enormous blizzard in 1996. So we got as far as Fredericksburg, and then it started snowing, and it really started snowing. So we are crawling along 95, and all I wanted to do was just get to campus. I mean, white-knuckled, here I am with two other kids in my car, and we get to campus, and so I was going to pull down Fraternity Row to drop them off at their respective houses, because we were all living right on Fraternity Row. And as I went to take that left-hand turn, the streets aren't plowed. I mean, the snow's really building up. I skidded. And I started to go up on the curb towards where all the business and econ professors' offices were. And all I could think of was, my car is going to skid into this building, and this poor professor is going to look out and see me, like, hitting the building. But luckily, the car just came to a stop. I was able to slowly back it off and parked my car. And I don't think I drove it again for 2 weeks. I mean, one, because you couldn't. The city was, like, immobilized. I mean, even the campus center was closed. And luckily, we had all just come back with break with food. So we in the sorority house, we were each making, whatever thing you were sent back with. I think we wiped out our food supply that first week and ate probably more candy than we ever needed to. But I do remember that, I had given them a ride. So there was a handful of people from the Northeast. It wasn't like I was, the only person from Connecticut there. There was a couple people from Greenwich outside of New York City, and a lot of people from like the Baltimore or Philadelphia area. So there was a handful from New England.
What did was the school closed during the blizzard? What did you guys do when things like that
I
happened?
do remember that the dining hall wasn't open because I don't think anyone could get there. So when we sort of exhausted our own food supply, we would walk to U-Crops. And because U-Crops had the cafe then, and I wasn't on the full meal plan my senior year. So I pretty much went to U-Crops for dinner anyway. So we would walk to whatever was open, and I was supposed to be doing an internship. So the first week back, the internship was canceled. And then I feel like it was halfway through the second week before most of us were able to actually start our internships because literally Richmond was shut down. I mean, there was just nothing that people could do. It was more snow than, they had seen. And I don't remember if it was like 2 feet. It was a lot of snow for an area that is not equipped to deal with it. And a lot of people did actually get stuck driving back and were in hotels for days. And it was just kind of a mess. I mean, I made it right on time. If I had been even an hour later in leaving, we wouldn't have made it back. We would be in a hotel in, Maryland somewhere for the week.
Did you consider moving back to the Northeast, or did you follow the South?
I actually, when I went to Randolph-Macon, I didn't plan on staying. I thought that I would go for probably a year or two and transfer. And obviously that did not happen. I stayed all 4 years and graduated. And at that point, my parents always joke me that I'm really a Southern belle that was like misplaced up in New England. But I had no desire to return. And for me, it's a lot about the climate. I just can't take winter. I mean, I hate snow and was so happy to get away from that. But, a lot of my friends settled down here. And like I said several times, I mean, my friends really are, my closest friends are still all my Randolph-Macon friends. It was just important to me to stay close to them physically. So I didn't have any desire. Probably will never live anywhere north of Virginia ever again.
We sort of end these interviews by asking 2 questions, and the first one is there any, we're kind of focusing on the women's experience. Is there any advice that you would give in particular to young women who are students at Randolph-Macon, or if not, just students in general at Randolph-Macon?
I mean, I would just say, make the most you can out of that experience. You're given a very unique opportunity, and, you have the resources, you have, as the campus is going through this huge, renovation effort and the capital campaign, I mean, it is going to be, certainly a gorgeous, first-class facility. So the fact that you have that combined with great professors, small classrooms. I mean, really, it is your opportunity to take and make what you can with it. So, try things that maybe you wouldn't necessarily have tried otherwise. Just put yourself out there and just get to know the people that are there and really embrace that you have a unique opportunity that many people will never have access to. One quick little side note, I mean, I went to this tiny little private school. My husband went to Towson and Maryland, 2 huge schools, and we could be anywhere. I mean, we could be on a vacation in Paris. We can be skiing in New Hampshire. Invariably, somehow I will run into someone that is connected to Randolph-Macon. He never runs into anyone he knows. He doesn't ever see fellow alumni. I think it's probably because the schools were so big, they just didn't know each other. But he sort of jokes me that I'm always like 6 degrees of separation from Randolph-Macon because I can always make that connection through a fellow alumni, a parent. Somehow someone has this connection to this little school, and here he's, a part of thousands and thousands, and he never ever has the ability to do that. So, just realize that you are in a very special environment and make the best of it.
And the last one is a pretty open-ended one, but is there, we have this list of questions, but it's probable that we've missed some big thing. I mean, is there something that on the record, you want to say about your experience, about the college, about the teachers, about anything?
Any big thing? Gosh, nothing is coming to mind off the top of my head, and I'm sure, we'll stop this conversation. I'll think of 1,000 things.
We can always come
Yeah, maybe let's come back to that one, because there's no one big thing that stands out. I've sort of like touched on some different things that have popped in my head. So let me come back to that.
Kind of the last.
Oh, is that the last question? Okay, any one big thing that we have?
Yeah, we can turn it.
Yeah,
off.
you can turn.